think of success, maybe you think of hoisting a Lombardi trophy after winning a Super Bowl. Maybe you think about getting that big promotion that you'd worked so hard to earn at work. Or maybe you think about having the biggest house with the fastest car in the garage. Or maybe you think about standing here on a TEDx stage telling your story. You see, when you hear about all these levels of success, though, what you don't think about is the adversity that it took someone to overcome to get there. We live in a world that's obsessed with the highlight reels. We're taught to bury the scars, polish the pitch, and post the wins. You see, my idea, though, is that adversity is the key to success, because anyone who has accomplished anything has overcome something. You know, it reminds me of this story of this boy in the 1900s in Midwest Kentucky. As a young boy, he grew up clutching a sketchbook and a pencil. His entire life, nothing mattered except for that sketchbook and that pencil. As he got older, his friends got into sports, not him. He was still sketching out these characters. He had hopes that these characters would lead to a world of imagination and maybe some magic. As he got even older, though, he saved up enough money to start a small animation studio in Kentucky. The small animation studio started to see some success, and he went on to hire some animators. You see, but the thing was, he was so wrapped up in that sketchbook that he lost sight of how to run a true business. And, well, he was forced to close his doors because he ran out of money. It was at this moment that he was left with nothing. And he was faced with a decision. He could either keep going on his dream, or he could sit there with his hands in his lap and say, "Why me?" Well, what he did was he decided to pack up all of his belongings, not very many of them, and he boarded a train west to California. On that train, the only thing in his hands at the time for that entire ride was, you guessed it, the sketchbook and the pencil. As he was sitting there, he came up with a new character, a new drawing. It was a character with these big round ears, this big smile, and right next to it, he wrote Steamboat Willie. Now, if you don't know who Steamboat Willie is, Steamboat Willie went on to become Mickey Mouse. And that dreamer who never gave up on himself, even when his doors were forced to shut and his dreams were dashed, that was Walt Disney. And Walt Disney's dreams and all of his success were not formed in spite of the adversity he was faced with. His success was based upon when his back was against the wall, it led to him being able to create something truly magical. And one of the most special things that Walt Disney went on to create was Disneyland in Anaheim, California. But on the other side of California, in the Bay Area, in the 1980s, there was a boy that grew up obsessed with the game of football. Him and his dad would go to games every Sunday. They'd watch Joe Montana lead the 49ers down the field. And the thing about Joe Montana is he was cool, calm, and collected under pressure. The boy loved that. You see, and as he got older, he didn't grow in to be the typical size of a quarterback. But for all of his shortcomings, he made sure that he made up for it in the weight room and everywhere else that he could so that he could become something. He went on to play football at the University of Michigan, where he still did not get much playing time. But eventually, he did get his shot. And when he got his shot, he was able to keep the starting job. You see, and he had somewhat hopes of making it to the NFL. In 2001, the NFL draft, 198 names were called before his. But with the 199th, this boy was chosen. The New England Patriots took a shot on this kid. And most people would be really excited about getting a chance to play in the NFL. But in this particular instance, the New England Patriots had just signed Drew Bledsoe to a 10-year, $100 million contract. The chances of him getting any playing time were super low. But, just like we talked about earlier, where all of his shortcomings were, as a lanky and overlooked quarterback, he stayed there and he got better because he knew that when his time was going to come, he was going to capitalize on it. On September 23rd, 2001, at Gillette Stadium in Foxborough, it was a brisk fall night. The New York Jets were in town. And, for all of you in the crowd, the New York Jets are not a very good team, but they were in town. And maybe this is one of their most notable accomplishments because Drew Bledsoe lines up under center. He rolls out to the right tackle misses the block, and Jets linebacker Mo Lewis delivers a crushing blow to the chest of Drew Bledsoe. Drew goes down, and the crowd goes silent. Not because there was a sack on the field, because they just saw the face of the franchise, the future, go down. At that very moment, Bill Belichick, the coach of the New England Patriots, turns around and says, "Number 12, you're up." Number 12 comes jogging out. Nobody knows this guy's name, but he's going to make sure that you will. Snaps the ball. Nothing fancy on the first couple plays, right? Because just like Joe Montana, he wants to be cool, calm, and collected under pressure. The New England Patriots go on to win that game. And Drew Bledsoe was out for an extended period of time, so the boy was the starter of the next game. And in the next game, the New England Patriots were facing the Indianapolis Colts. The Indianapolis Colts, only 2 years prior, had drafted the golden boy, Peyton Manning. He was the face of the NFL. But, wouldn't you know it, the New England Patriots defeated the Indianapolis Colts 44-13 with number 12 as their starter. And you see, after that game, number 12 never gave up his starting opportunity again. Because after that, he went on to lead them in that very same season to a Super Bowl. And after that, another 6 Super Bowls followed. And I think anybody can probably guess in this room that I'm obviously talking about Tom Brady. Okay, and Tom Brady's success was formed because of the adversity he was faced with. By being that overlooked and lanky quarterback, it forced him to focus on the things that made him even better. Because when he was struggling, he would be better in the areas that others weren't. And because of that, he went on to become one of the greatest sports players of all time. But talking about football, right, it reminds me of another football player. One that was born on an island in the Pacific. Growing up, he was surrounded by larger-than-life characters. His mother was an event promoter, and his father was a world champion. Everybody knew his family. You see, he had the easy route. He could have taken it and gone into the family business. But he also said, "Nope, I don't want to be a football player." He went on to play football at the University of Miami. Where at the University of Miami, he went on to win a national championship. He was very confident that the NFL would come calling. But injuries started to hit him, and playing time started to shrink. And the NFL dreams started to dash. And then, in the NFL draft, his name was never called. He had 2 options at that point. He could quit, or he could keep following the dream. So he decided to get in his car, and he drove to Canada, where he was going to play in the CFL. His stint lasted 3 short days before he was cut from the team. Now, he was out of options. He returned home to his 1-bedroom apartment, and he sat on his mattress, and he cried. He was humiliated. Everything he thought he was going to do, he didn't do. So he sat there. Everything he had in his pocket was all that he had left. He took out the dollars in his pocket, and he counted it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. He had $7 left to his name. And he said, "Well, I guess this is all I got." So he sat there, and he reinvented himself. He learned how to electrify a crowd, how to ignite the masses, and even how to raise an eyebrow. You see, he went on to get into the family business. And at WrestleMania X8 in 2003, on one side of the ring, you had Hulk Hogan, the face of the generation prior. Adorned in his red and yellow, everybody was going crazy because he was the one that put wrestling on the map. But in the other corner, you had the boy who was born in the Pacific, who just sort of ended up here because nothing else worked out. But 68,000 people packed in to Toronto Sky Dome, and the chants were back and forth. And at the end of the match, the boy's hand was raised. Yes, because he won the match, but also because he just became the face of the company. And this was a $1 billion company, and he wasn't even supposed to end up here. You see, but that reinvention caused him to end up there. But even at the top of his game, he said, "I'm not finished yet." He decided to get in the movies, and the first movie he was cast in was The Scorpion King. Critics laughed. "What is a pro wrestler doing in movies?" they said. But he kept on pushing. And before you know it, he was one of the most bankable stars in Hollywood. And then, that wasn't enough either. He wanted more. He went on to become a boardroom beast. Went on to found companies like Terramana Tequila. He became a major face for Under Armour. And he just became an absolute superstar. And by now, I'm assuming you know, I'm talking about Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. You see, and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson's success was formed because of his adversity. Because when he had $7 left in his pocket, he took it and turned it into something special. And when we talk about wrestling, it reminds me of the biggest fan of wrestling I've ever known. A boy who was born in Long Island, New York, to a family that seemed larger than life. His parents had every car you can imagine. He lived in the biggest house. And for him, everything seemed good. Until it wasn't, you see, because he was living with what's called the illusion of stability. Okay? And when he was 16 years old, he was left to bury his mother. His father put him up for adoption only shortly after. And he was left to figure out his path from there. And he was sort of hopeless. You see, and his breaking point, or his rock bottom, came when he was sitting in a hospital room when his appendix had burst and they were forced to do emergency surgery. When most people come out and there's family waiting for them, there was nobody waiting for that boy. And it was on him, you see, because he was sitting there and he realized he could be destined for more, but he wasn't so sure. A conversation happened with his cousin where, among other things that were discussed, was said that you are supposed to be doing more. Fortunately enough, he had family in high places. They took him in, and he moved across the country relatively, and they gave him a shot, you see. But this wasn't him being saved. Just because he had family he was going to live with, you have no idea how hard the boy had to work, right? Because the discipline and the structure that he was faced with turned out to be everything he could have ever needed. And by 24 years old, the boy had graduated college, he had worked so many jobs, and he was in an industry now where he was actually at the top of the field. And he was doing unbelievable things. Until he said, this isn't good enough. So he quit. He said, I want to do this my way, you see, because my adversity makes me want to reach success in a different way. So sitting at a kitchen table with his laptop and a whole bunch of stubbornness, he started to build a company. And that was the very, very first brick of Safe Shield Insurance. Safe Shield Insurance is now a multi-million-dollar insurance agency, and the owner of it, it's me. Okay? And the greatest thing about all of that is that my success wasn't formed in spite of the adversity I was faced with. It was formed because of it. Because when the odds were stacked against me, I kicked the door in. The greatest truth of all that I learned is that once in a while, you really do get shown the light in the strangest of places, but only if you look at it right. You see, because here's the truth. Success isn't forged in the easy moments. It's forged in the fire of loss, failure, and rejection. It's built by people who refuse to let rock bottom be the end of their story. And if you're carrying your own scars, know this. Your story isn't over. Sometimes the hardest chapter is what makes you unstoppable. You see, because Walt Disney carried rejection and bankruptcy on a train, and he headed west, where he went on to create one of the most magical companies in the world. Tom Brady went from being an overthought quarterback to the greatest quarterback to ever do it. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson took $7 and turned it into being one of the most bankable people in the world. And me, I'm doing everything I could have ever dreamed of. And I got the biggest smile on my face doing it. And it's all because of the adversity I was faced with. Because adversity doesn't end your story. Sometimes it's just where unstoppable begins. Thank you.